So this session is about the people in your business. So I thought it might be interesting to submit a slightly different session about the learnings that we've had growing and building our company. So I will be talking about our company. It's obviously not a sales pitch, but it's just kind of like the top tips that we've picked up along the way, the things that we've changed. And our biggest asset is the people in the business. Everything we do is about, are they happy? Are they productive? Are they safe? Are they enjoying themselves? And that's one of the reasons why we come to events like SQL Bits, because it's just a fantastic place to network, to learn, to share knowledge, and so they can empower themselves to do the best that they can in their business. So I run alongside Alex purplefrogsystems.com. So we are a data analytics consultancy, and a couple of years ago we also launched Power BI Sentinel, which is a SaaS product which sits on top of Microsoft Power BI. So I'm sure you've probably already heard about that, so I'm not going to go on about what our companies actually do. But alongside that, I also run a digital marketing consultancy called Fraggleworks. So this is where I do keynote talks, and I help businesses drive their own businesses forward and try and sort of leave them with tips that they can use and implement straight away in their businesses. So I've got a couple of different hats that I wear, and very different customer bases and very different ways of interacting with people. So obviously Purple Frog has employees, Fraggleworks doesn't. So there's very different ways of running the business. So something that you may or may not know about me is a musician, and the reason why I wanted to bring this into the talk is because I'm going to talk about work-life balance, which I think is really, really important. And I started playing musical instruments when I was about 3 or something. Someone stuck a recorder in my hand. And for me, I think this is a really valuable hobby, and it's taught me so much. And sometimes I see memes on things like Facebook about, I'm so glad I learned the recorder, blasting out 3 blind mice has really helped me solve this problem in this meeting. And yes, that's really funny when you read it, but actually it does teach you some really valuable skills. I'm going to come on to that in a little bit, because being a musician is a big part of how I operate as a person. But one of my great passions is people. Every role that I've ever had has involved working with people, liaising with people, and trying to get the best out of people. And the primary role that I have in our company is human resources. I also have another hat that I wear, which is in charge of information security. But in 2022, the Federation of Small Businesses approached me because they have voluntary roles where they will give you something to champion. We're a UK-based business, and they asked me if I was interested in championing skills. So they saw me as we're classed as a small business, so they wanted to know what sort of skills do we need in our business. And obviously we're looking at the digital skills and the digital space and how we get people into our organisation. So through the Federation of Small Businesses, they then connect me directly working with the team at Number 10, so I've been attending parliamentary meetings, I've been leading webinars with the Treasury and Department of Education, because what I found is a lot of the way that systems are set up is aimed at really, really, really big businesses, big corporates. So I'm there as the smaller business saying, oh, hey, that's a great framework, but how am I actually going to implement that in a smaller business? That framework that you've written is designed for a huge IT software company with loads of different roles. How does that work in practice for a small business where I'm asking my dev team to not only be technical, but also they've got to be client-facing, and that wouldn't happen in a big business. So I found that really valuable, getting involved in those kind of conversations. So the latest thing was I was interviewed by Vanessa, and she was absolutely lovely, Vanessa Feltz, on Talk TV, but we were talking about skills and apprenticeships and pathways into technology. So when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about what a challenging few years it's been for businesses, but mainly for the people in the businesses. And when we were in lockdown, I decided that I was going to do a qualification. So I've always wanted to do my Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. So you might have seen CIPD. It's a kind of a people qualification. So again, it was something to do whilst we were in lockdown. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And it's also, I believe you should never stop learning. No one knows everything. So part of this talk also is about what are you doing as part of your continued professional development. Obviously coming to events like SQL Bits is brilliant, but there's other things that you could be doing as well to nourish yourself. This is a picture, it was a long time ago. You can see here by Alex's brown hair. So this is when we first set up Purple Frog back in 2006. And he'd had a very similar experience to me. He'd gone up very high in a company and he was an IT director. So we set Purple Frog up and I then joined him in 2008. So again, I should add the disclaimer that, this is not about, we're amazing. It's not about that. I'm just trying to explain to you the learnings that I've had and what we've done and what's working in our business. So I enjoyed running Purple Frog, but at the time there was only a couple of people in it and I was missing that people interaction. So I thought, well, actually, I'm just going to set up another consultancy on the side. And that's where I developed FraggleWorks. So initially I was doing websites for people, helping them with their social media strategy. But I've since refined that into delivering talks and webinars. And that's kind of what I'm now known for. And in terms of networking, I try and bring people together. So sometimes I organise large events, like next week, I'm speaking at a conference in Birmingham for digital women, and it's about empowering women into technology. So I love sort of working on those kind of larger events. So one model I wanted to mention to you is something called Plan, Do, Review. And this is something that I've used throughout my career. And it's looking at what your plan is, actually doing your plan, and then reviewing your plan. You can apply this not only to the people in the business, but also any system, any kind of advertising that you use. Like if you're using things like Google AdWords, do you ever actually go back and look at that advertising campaign and think, what was the return on that investment? So I always keep coming back to this very, very simple model. And I was thinking about how I could better run my businesses and review them and evolve them. And that's why I made the change with FraggleWorks, because I found that I was just stuck behind a computer building websites for people. I wasn't actually doing what I said I wanted to do, which was actually helping people, training them, mentoring and coaching them. So that's a really, really good model that I would highly recommend. It's really, really simple. So at the same time as that, Purple Frog was growing and we were starting to take on more people. Here are our offices in Telford, which we're now exploding out of. And I was sort of being pulled more back into that business as well because it needed the infrastructure, especially when you start thinking about all the employment laws and legislations of employing people, the health and safety, the legal aspects. There's a lot of things that you have to have in place. So I was drawing on my learning, start my career, about all the different building blocks for success. And I've highlighted them here. These are the ones that have worked for me, and I'm going to step through them. But it's about creating that people and learning culture. It's about engaging in the community and empowering yourself through continued learning. It's also about understanding strengths and weaknesses, and the overall package that you put together for someone, and then how you recruit them, how you onboard them, and how you have the pathways through into your business. So I'm just going to step through each of those. So one of the most important things I wanted to get right was the culture. So I've alluded to in my career, I've had good managers, I've had bad managers, and I've observed high-functioning teams and poor-functioning teams. Sometimes even just having one bad apple in a team can completely disrupt it. So I was taking everything that I'd learned from these big businesses and realizing that you can't just say, I'm going to do that training course and have a tick box and that's enough. It's kind of, you have to keep drilling through and understanding the why. And the culture of an organization comes from the top down. If the senior leadership team team are not all bought into it, and they don't all follow it, and they're seen to follow it, it's not going to work. So it's absolutely vital that in my role heading up human resources that I have a strategic seat at board level discussions. And I know, obviously, because it's my business, I am going to be there. But traditionally, human resources hasn't always been round the table when these big conversations are being happened. So if they're talking about offshoring a load of staff, what's the impact of that on the existing staff if you're suddenly bringing in all this extra resource? So for me, that is a massive ask that you have to have the head of people in those discussions, because they understand how it's going to affect them. And in fact, I had to write copious essays on this when I was doing my CIPD course. So essentially, it's about taking the good bits of what I've learned and embedding those in our business. But the key thing that we wanted to do was to empower our team to actually get stuff done. Not having endless meetings, drawing up huge specifications that no one's ever going to read. It's having a really simple approach where we know exactly what we need to deliver, what the deadlines are, but not actually documenting every single detail of it, because we work in an agile way and we want to show people a prototype relatively quickly, because quite often when you're working with users, they don't know what they want until you put something in front of them. That really helps them start to visualize, oh, okay, I get it now. I can see the use case for what you're showing me. So this is why we work in this very sort of fast prototyping agile way, and then we'll refine it. And that means to me having a flat management structure. So rather than having lots of team leaders and project managers, we just keep it really simple. There's one project manager who oversees the whole of our operations, all of the different aspects of all the projects that are working, and then I just oversee more the people side of it. We don't need a team leader on top of that, because every person in the business then leads on a client project. So that is kind of a big change from the way that you would work if it was a big business, because obviously you can have more people, you can have separate project managers and team leaders, you can have all these different managers, but in a small business you can't do that. So I was keen not to replicate that structure and actually let people get on with it. But the key areas that our business needs to succeed are, we do need someone heading up sales, we need someone heading up the technical projects, we need someone heading up finance, human resources, marketing, and then legal and operations. Those are our key kind of areas that we do have someone heading up. So we also don't want to micromanage people as well. I've experienced that. That's not a healthy way of operating. So again, it's very much about giving people that flexibility to do what they think's right and ask for help if they need it. So it's all about empowering people. Team bonding is really important, so we try and take time out to have team outings. And this, again, this is not a tick box exercise. This is really fundamentally about gelling people together and having fun outside of work. It's about breaking down barriers, getting them to interact. And they've even come up with creating their own five-side football teams. That didn't come from me. They evolved that themselves. So this is about really getting the people working together in a highly effective team. So as part of empowering people, we want them to learn. So this learning culture very much comes from the top down. So we direct all staff to take 3 hours of learning a week. So it's directed time. And we actually do track this time and report on it, so we can see how many hours they're booking against learning. And if they're not booking enough, we will actually say to them, oh, hey, you haven't done very many hours for learning this month. Might be because they've got a big deadline, but we use a tool called Clockify to track the learning that they're doing. And the learning can be on anything that they want to do, as long as it's advancing their knowledge in some kind of tech, something that they're interested in, something that might help them with their job. So it could be new technologies, new skills, it could be Microsoft exams, training courses. To us, it doesn't matter, as long as you're actually doing that continued learning. And again, that's where that top-down approach applies. I've done a course recently. I'm thinking about the next thing that I can do. So I'm always encouraging everyone to keep learning. So as part of this learning culture, obviously a key thing for a technology company are exams like the Microsoft certifications. So we will give them time to study, take these exams, and we'll pay for them. But I think that's really valuable because it really starts embedding those top tips, that best practice. It's setting them apart from industry peers. It's validating knowledge. And also, simply for us, it helps us maintain our Microsoft partner status. So there's something in it for both of us. From the business, we get the benefit of the partner network. From the person, they get the benefit from learning that knowledge. So it's a mutually beneficial agreement. But we also direct people to undertake other learnings. So as part of running a technology business, we have to have things like ISO 27001. We do data analytics, so people want to know what we're doing with their data. Have we got the right processes and systems in place? A big part of that is, are the people adhering to those policies? So the team also have to do extra training on things like GDPR, anti-bribery, money laundering, and we have to track those things. A lot of client tenders are actually asking that as part of onboarding and sales. Like, what are you doing in your organisation? So that's now part of our tender or acceptance for new projects. We also get the team to write blogs, so they guest blog on our website. And this is about knowledge sharing and giving back. It's helping them to establish their own professional credibility. And quite simply, it also benefits the organisation because it helps optimise our web presence. It drives traffic to our website. So everything's all about search engine optimisation. Search engines like changing content. So, you know, it's a win-win. It's them establishing that they know what they're talking about. And sometimes we have ironic situations where someone might be searching for the best way of doing something, and they actually then end up on our own blog, and they're like, oh yeah, that's what we do. So this is something that I've found works really, really well. So I would encourage other businesses to do that, to give people the space to actually show themselves and give them opportunities. And also giving them opportunities to run things like community user groups. So we set up the Birmingham Data Platform group, and this is about giving them the experience of what it's like to organise and host an event, and giving them opportunities to practice doing lightning talks, networking with peers and learning from speakers, and creating a space within the community where we can give back. And to us, that's really, really important, because when we first started the business, we would go to community events, and it would be us sitting in the audience learning from all these amazing speakers. And that was where we found this amazing, vibrant community. And then some of us have gone on to get more and more involved in that community. So this is part of our ethos as well as how we try and give back. So it's about empowering our people, but also helping the community as well. And we also encourage people to become STEM ambassadors. This is a UK-based thing, but there are very similar programs that run globally across the world. STEM Ambassadors is promoting pathways into things like digital through science, technology, engineering, and maths. And the network works really well because it's about inspiring the next generation. And this is something that doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in your own business or working for a big business or a small business, you can volunteer to become a STEM ambassador. And that's where you can go into schools and do talks, you can do keynote speeches, you can help them at STEM days, you can go and speak at career insights workshops, and sometimes they actually do week-long STEM events where they do lots of different activities. So any member of staff that wants to go and be a STEM ambassador, again, we encourage that. You know, I think there's something special about going back to the school where you did your exams and going back and saying, this is why you're learning maths. This is what you can do with it. You can learn things like Python, and then Python can help you with machine learning. You can create websites, you can learn HTML, there's all these different things that feed from subjects in schools. And there's a big problem at the moment where there's a disconnect between what businesses need and what they're learning in schools. So I want us to go into schools and help the students understand this is why you're learning English, this is why you're learning maths, this is how to use a spreadsheet, this is how to use PowerPoint, because when you get into a business, we're kind of expecting that they understand and they know all these things. And also it's about being creative and thinking outside the box. They're being programmed to be little robots doing exams. When they're working in a business, we want them to be ideas people. We want them to be these creative minds. And that's why I think it's really, really important. And there's another organisation run by the Careers and Enterprise Company where you can be an enterprise advisor. So it's very similar to the STEM Ambassador Network, but with enterprise advisors, it's not only going in to do talks in schools, you get paired with a school in your local area, and it's about challenging their curriculum and their strategy. So I work with a couple of schools and colleges, and they're actually now sending me their ICT curriculum, their T-level curriculum, their Apprentice, and I'm giving them feedback on, well, that's great, but that's already out of date. We're not using that tech anymore. We're now doing this. So it's really, really important, again, for those teacher encounters, so when whoever's teaching that subject, that we're telling them this is what's happening in the real world, because we all know with technology, it's moving fast. You know, there are new languages, there are new skills, there are new ways of developing things coming out all the time. By the time they've written a curriculum, it's 5 years out of date. So the SQL family is really, really important to all of us. It's being part of that global community, and that's why we all come to SQL Bits. Ooh. And also events like SQL Saturdays, the Pearl Summit, Data Relay, New Stars of Data, Data Toboggan. There's all sorts of events that are going on where we encourage our staff to go out and talk at these events because it's a great learning experience for them. But it's all about understanding your people, what's their background, where have they come from, what experiences have they had, and what are their strengths and weaknesses, because when you're assigning projects, it's not just about, oh yeah, they're really good at that one, they'll do that one quickly. What project is actually going to stretch them and get them to learn new ways of doing things and embed some of that best practice that they've learned from coming to some of these community events? Generally, a lot of our clients, when they start working with us, they stay with us and we become part of that team with them. So we have a very simple approach. We take on projects that the team want to work on, and we take on clients that are generally nice to work with. So that's what we try and do. And we're always talking and getting feedback from how those projects are working in practice. How is the interaction with those clients? And some clients are difficult because that's their nature and because they can be. But it's really important to keep having those conversations to make sure the team are happy. So we do that through one-to-ones. So it's really important to take time out to talk to the team and find out outside of the project what are they doing. But it's also about getting that package right. When we first started Purple Frog, it was you had to be in the office 100% of the time. That was our position, and that was from a data security point of view. That's because we had premises. And then lockdown happened. So we've fundamentally had to change the way that we're running our business. And that has meant use different systems, putting different processes in place, because we're now having to work in a hybrid world. And for me, I'm still responsible for our members of staff, whether they're working in the office or whether they're working at home. So we need to see the environment that they're going to be in. You know, have they got the right equipment around them? Are they able to jump on a Teams call or a Zoom call? Have they got the infrastructure and the kit? So it's about making sure you can operate in that new hybrid fashion. But getting the package right, it's trying to get the right salary. We do things like having a healthcare scheme for not only them, but for their family, pension. They can accrue extra holiday, and depending on if they've been here for 2 years, you keep getting an extra day's holiday. Try and get them the best kits. There's nothing worse than trying to work on an old laptop that's dying, that someone else has had, that's been passed down 3 times. So generally, everyone gets a brand new laptop. They get to do training, buy them company swag, but they're encouraged to do talks and get out to the business as well. You know, I even bought a picnic bench for people to go outside and have their lunch on, because I just thought it'd be a nice thing to do. But when we come down to trying to get the right people in our business, so we've already got a really good team that we're so proud of. It's about recruiting people that are going to fit into that team as well. So generally, I will screen CVs for interview. We get a member of staff to hold that initial recruitment test. We're finding we're doing lots and lots of interviews, and we're taking the whole management team doing these interviews. So we've refined our recruitment process where it actually now starts with an online test. So one member of staff holds that online test. And actually, if they're horrible to her, then that person doesn't go any further, because actually that's a really good insight into how that person is if they're dealing with someone that they think is unimportant, and actually to us that person is very important in the business. So we're looking for that right attitude. Sorry, she's in the room. We're looking for the right attitude, really. It's not necessarily the person that has all the right skills. And then when they come in to do that interview, we split it into two parts. We do a technical interview, so obviously I get the lead tech guys to lead on that, just to try and get an understanding of where they're at with different technologies. But I do a people interview, so I'll ask them really random questions, like what's their favourite Star Wars film? And it usually really throws them, because they're not expecting me to ask a question like that. There is only one right answer, by the way, which is Empire Strikes Back, just in case you're wondering. We also then get the dev team in to talk to that candidate. So we go out of the room, and we just leave the dev team alone with that person. That person can then interview our dev team and say, actually, what is it like to work here? You know, what does it feel like in practice? And then the dev team can talk to them and say, okay, so what are you actually like and what do you do? And we just let them discuss it amongst themselves, and then we come back in at the end. But then we go around the table and we just sort of say, what's your feedback? And that is the joy of running a smaller business. Obviously, you can't do that if you're a massive business, but we want the team to be part of that decision about who we bring in to that environment, and we want to get everyone's input on that. So then we do onboarding and one-to-ones. We've developed a wiki repository where we can stick all the questions that a new starter might ask, and everyone gets involved with updating that. So every time we get a new joiner, you know, what are the questions that you had? Okay, update the wiki. We also have a buddy system, so usually we'll ask one of the team, I know you're not going to be working with that person, but can you go and check in on them, make sure that they're okay, make sure they're settling in okay, have they got the right kit? But as I alluded to earlier, we have these monthly one-to-ones. And this is where it's a space outside of technical projects that they're working on. And it's with me. I don't get involved in the technical projects. We also have the project manager. So there's just the two of us, we do the one-to-ones. But this is where you can say if you're unhappy with something, if you're not enjoying the project that you're working on, or not happy about this, or I want to learn more about this type of work. So we do listen to that feedback, and we will then think, okay, well, maybe we should move that one to that project, or maybe we should take on some more work that's going to feed that one, because we want everyone to be happy. We want them to be working on projects that are going to be exciting. Obviously, there's always dull parts to running a business where you're answering tickets and fixing things. But generally, we want people to be learning and moving forward. So in those one-to-ones, it's about goal setting, tracking what training they're doing, and making sure that they're adhering to our policies. And then we will reward the staff with rises. So if they keep jumping through the things that we've put for them, then we will reward them for it. So it's all about listening to the people. And one of the pathways into our business is via the apprenticeship route, because we want to get young people into the workplace. So we were absolutely delighted that we found Annabelle, who is helping to run SQL Bits today. So she won Apprentice of the Year. She also passed every part of her apprenticeship with distinction. So this is amazing. She's just gone from being in college to running an international conference and getting a qualification. So it's just a fantastic way of getting those young students in real world of work. But there are also really important statistics when you're thinking about running a business, and not everyone is happy in their jobs. 1 in 4 employees are quitting because their employer is forcing them to try and come into the office because they wanted to work from home. Bad managers really affect the economy, and this is in dollars, but it actually affects $223 billion through having bad management. 52% of resignations are actually preventable. So does that mean that they weren't having one-to-ones? Does that mean that they weren't listening to what the staff were saying? And actually only 16% of employees are satisfied with response to any feedback that they've given. That's a very small statistic. Proper onboarding can help improve retention by 82%. I've heard horror stories of people joining huge corporates where they've tried to automate the entire process. You don't even get a person talking to you anymore. They're just sent a link to this thing, download that, fill in that form, go onto that online platform. That's their induction process. There's no people involved in that process. And only 94% of employees would stay longer if they allowed them to learn. So that's quite worrying if that's the state of the world that's happening, and that's not what I want for our business. So we're really working hard to try and stop that happening. So those are our kind of key building blocks: the people, culture, the learning culture, getting involved in that SQL community, Microsoft examinations, understanding your team's strengths and weaknesses, trying to get the package right for them, trying to get the recruitment process right, and trying to have connections with schools and colleges so you're feeding the next generation of people into your business. So it's about having that right structure. And one model I wanted to show to you is the Belbin team roles. So if you've not heard about Belbin, you can have a look at belbin.com. And this was a concept developed by Meredith Belbin, and what they found was the types of behavior in which people engage are infinite. There's a range of useful behaviors which make an effective contribution to team performance. And what Belbin have done is they've created 9 team roles. So you take an online quiz, and it finds out your preferred style. So generally, people fit into either a thinking role, an action or task-based role, or a social role. And I'm not going to read out all the different descriptions. Have a look on the website, and it will give you all the answers. But the key learning point is that you always need ideas people in a team. You always need people in a team that are actually going to get the job done and finish it. And you also need people in the team that are the social ones that bind everyone together. So if you've got an ineffective team, it might be that the mix isn't quite right. You've got too many ideas people and not enough doers, or you've got too many social people and not enough thinkers. So when you start thinking about high-performing teams, Belbin is a really good way of trying to figure out what role is actually everyone within that team. And I've used this model for the whole of my career, so now I can almost figure out who everyone is before they've even done the test. But that's a really important thing to think about your team dynamic. Think about who is actually doing what role in that team. But it's also about listening to the people. And sometimes I go on social media, and then I uncovered that Joe had decided he was going to write this big post about an experience that he'd had and how we'd supported him through it. I found that Annabelle had popped online, and she'd put about passing her apprenticeship. So these are kind of what they're saying and what they're feeling, what they're putting out on social media. It's not come from us, the business. This is coming from the people within it. And I was thinking about some of our younger employees, and this is the world that I grew up in. I grew up in the 80s. And when I was writing this talk, their experience of growing up now is very different to the experience that I had before we really kind of had the full digital, social media, everything's everywhere worlds. We had one computer in our school, and it was on a trolley that got wheeled about, and it could say, "Hello world," and that was about it. We had teletext on the TV that we could do a text-based search to try and find what was going on the news. We had tapes that were stuck to our sides that would play one song, and then you'd play the tape, and you'd turn it over, and you get the other side. You had 2 songs in a Walkman. It's very different. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because when you're bringing the younger generation into your business, they've had a very different experience to the older generation. Technology is changing fast. When I go into schools and do talks, I tell them, you don't know how lucky you are to have the internet the way that it's working now. The World Wide Web is infinitely searchable. When I was at school, we had to look things up in an encyclopedia. We had a map in the car to try and navigate where on earth we were going. We went into shops to buy things. You had to wait an entire week to watch the next episode of your favorite show. So it's very, very different to the world that we're in now. You know, the new normal is kids are picking up smartphones and just doing stuff on them. And the grandparents, like I have no idea how that child is doing that. So you've got to think about that when you bring people into your business. You know, they use a different language. The instant messaging language is very different to the way that we use email, for example. Email's so old to the younger generation. So you have to train them. You've got to put an out of office on. This is how you form an email. You start with hello. You don't just start writing. So it's a very different way of working. And I'm very conscious of the digital overload, and I don't want people to feel overwhelmed with digital. We're getting messages from all sorts of different platforms, social notifications, email, Teams bugging us, Zoom meetings, it's everywhere. And as director of a technical company, I don't want people to burn out through that. I've noticed changes in people. People seem less, certainly students, they seem less resilient. They don't know how to wait for things. They don't know how to figure things out. There's a lot more anxiety and mental health issues in the workplace. So it's about using technology to try and help our mental health. So it's disabling things like notifications, autoresponders. If you're using smartphones, maybe move things off the home screen so you're not tempted to go and look at Facebook and TikTok and all these amazing social technical things. But it's about focusing on being present. So I joined up with Tech Time Out. There are various initiatives across the world. This is the UK version, but it's called Tech Time Out. And it's about encouraging people to take time out of tech to help their mental health. Going for a walk, going reading a book, going doing a talk, anything to just get them out of the office. So you can find out more about that on their website, but I've become an ambassador for that. There was also a lot of impact on people going through lockdown. The conversations I was having with various members of the team were very different when they were stuck at home as to the conversations I'm having with them in the office. So you have to evolve the conversations that you're having, the systems that you're doing. We introduced something called a pulse survey, where we did a quick survey of, you know, how's everyone getting on? Are you okay? What are you doing? Just getting that feedback from people. We introduced having brown bag sessions, which historically brown bag came from you'd bring your lunch to work in a brown bag, but you would sit down and eat it at the same time and learn something. So we have these brown bag sessions now where we take it in turns to deliver a talk on something. But that, again, it's part of that mental health, taking an hour away from your desk, because it's about building that team. So we're now in the fourth industrial revolution. Everything is about digital, data, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. It's about how we're using data, and we're using things like AI to consume and to manage it. The impact of COVID-19 is still kind of yet to be fully realized, but Gartner showed that 48% of board directors are expecting their business models to change. And a lot of companies are really digitizing. And whilst this is really exciting, as a company that does things like machine learning and data science, we always have to remember the people in that equation. And it's about making better use of your data. So I introduced a new HR platform to help me manage the team and the staff, because we were growing fast and I needed to collect data to understand how we were operating. So I put in place something called Citrus HR. There's loads of different human resources platforms that you can pick, but I wanted one that kind of not only tracked the onboarding of staff and their employee contracts, but something where I could look at what policies have they read? What training are they doing? Where can I set goals? Where can I do staff surveys? Where can I track time? So I really liked this one, and actually the price per user is really, really good. So again, it's about putting together the right systems to help you manage the people in your organisation. And HR data is not just for vanity. If you send out a survey, it's not just supposed to be, a tick box, yeah, we're great. It's about really listening to what are they saying, what are they not happy with, what can we change to make it better. And you can use things like AI to help you in the business. Human resources is being revolutionized by things like AI, screening CVs to help you find candidates. Things like ManyChat, ChatBT, people are using these AI models to help them write words and come up with ways of doing things. But there's a massive learning in this process. You can't fully take the humans out of this. Because if you feed something like an AI, a load of CVs, if there's any kind of inherent bias in there, then it's going to inherit that bias. And there's been many examples of that where CVs have been screened and it's only picked white males because that was the data it was fed. So it's quite an exciting space to be, but we're not quite there yet from my point of view. So in terms of the power of the people, I love the Nike logo, just do it. Sometimes you can overthink these things. But my main learnings are to establish the people culture from the get-go, encourage that continuous learning. And that's not just for the team, that's for everyone in the organization. It's engaging with people, encourage them to become part of this vibrant SQL community, taking things like Microsoft exams and really playing to people's strengths and weaknesses when signing projects. Trying to get that package right, and also making sure you've got all the pathways feeding through to encourage the younger people into tech. So if you want to find out a bit more, I did a TEDx talk on how I balance that work-life balance. So you can find that on TED.com. I'm really pleased that the culture that we've established means that people do leave work on time. They generally take a lunch. That was something in big business I never saw. So what changes can you make in your organizations to try and encourage others to do the same? I also wrote a book, if anyone wants a copy of the book, about creating joy. It's basically involving that TEDx talk into making sure that every part of what you're doing is about doing something that you love, and it's walking the walk. So never stop learning. Think about what you could do next to make a difference, and it's about doing what you love. So thank you very much.